Begin with this very interesting topic that is Java 8 date time APIs. So this topic actually deserves a lot of attention. Uh, it is overlooked to a lot of extent. People just end up working with the date and the calendar class that we normally see, and that had some inherent problems. So let's begin our discussion with this very important topic, that is date time APIs in Java IC 8. Why do we need to discuss this particular topic? Now, why there is a need for us to discuss this particular topic? That's an important discussion that we need to have before. Now, why are we going to talk about this particular topic? Because the date time APIs that we already have in Java, where we have used two classes at different times, date and calendar class is what we have used, they have some inherent problems. So let's understand what those problems are in those existing date time APIs which are available in Java, and how those problems are addressed to when we, or whatever problems that I list down over here, all those problems will be addressed to when it comes to Java IC 8. So what are those inherent problems that we have in the existing date time APIs that we have? First is thread safety. The two most widely used classes in Java, date and calendar, both of them are not thread safe. Now, if they are not thread safe, as long as you are writing a single threaded application, what we have been doing till now, till that time it is okay. But moment you go on to write a multi-threaded application, this will actually be a bigger problem for us to debug the application and so on. So thread safety is a matter of concern when we really want to share that object, date objects between multiple objects. So that won't be possible. So to address this issue, we have this date time APIs which have now been introduced in Java. A complete new package with several sub packages have now been introduced. Other, API design and ease to understanding. Now here, when we talk about day-to-day operations, suppose I tell you what's the date tomorrow. Now when I'm asking you what's the date tomorrow or what's your birth date, in that particular thing, I'm not really interested in having that information regarding the time. Likewise, if I ask you what's the time now, when I ask you what's the time now, am I really interested in knowing what is the date today? Now, unfortunately, the calendar and the date class gives you date as well as time, but they have those unnecessary components also which are there. So if I'm going to talk only about the time, if I say what time my office starts, now do you really need to tell what day it starts? I'm asking about what time it starts every day. So in that case, I'm only interested in the time, but this date and calendar class gives you unnecessary information a lot of times. So we really want to focus on the information that we would like to have. And why have that unnecessary information being added whenever we are handling those things? So to address those issues, we have this date time API which has now been introduced. So let's explore this date time API which has now been introduced. The third, zoned date and time. Now, zone is something which is very important. Keep in mind, now today's world, we are working in a connected kind of environment wherein your team may be placed at different places. Few members of your team may be in India and few members of your team may be in Georgia and few members may be in US. Now that's going to create a very complex kind of scenario and you have to come down for a Zoom meeting. Now the simplest scenario, if I tell you the lecture starts at 6 p.m. But if one of your team member is in Tokyo, another team member is in US, and you at 6 p.m. in the evening, if you join, they will not be at the same time because the time zones are different. So we would like to have date and time which can be converted according to the time zone. That means if it's right now, what's the time? It's 6:21 in India, so it's 7 o'clock in Bangladesh. So if my counterpart in Bangladesh is sitting there, if I say 6:30 p.m. in India, actually he has to be converted as 7 o'clock, 7 p.m. in Bangladesh. So we need to handle those things. And luckily, we are fortunate. We have a very good support that has now been provided to us in Java AC 8. Unfortunately, it took a long time, but now we have support in Java AC 8 for all these kind of features. So all the problems that we had with these date and time APIs, which are already there before Java AC 8, has now been very nicely addressed in this Java AC 8 package, a package that has been newly introduced, a completely new package called as java.time. So this java.time has several sub packages. I plan to discuss three sub packages today: chrono, format, zone, chrono, temporal, and for zone. If possible, format also I'll cover. But then we'll be exploring almost all APIs over here. Almost all APIs I'll touch upon. So you will have a very good understanding. One big example, this is possibly the biggest example that I'll be discussing in the entire session. It goes on because there are so many classes that have been introduced and so many different ways we can carry out an operation. The operations are quite simple, but then simplicity is the best thing about this particular API. It is simple and it addresses to our specific requirements about dates and time and temporals and other things, zone. A specific kind of requirement it addresses to. You do not have to have that baggage of some unnecessary information while you're handling those date and time. So let's begin our journey. So the classes that I'm going to introduce you to, and the first class that we're going to talk about are the date and time classes, and then I'll proceed with other classes. So date time we provide 4 classes that provide exclusively with date information without respect to time or zone data. So when I'm talking about date and time, okay, when I'm talking about date, so in that case, or if I'm talking about time, not always I'm interested in knowing the zone, whether I'm in India or whether I'm in somewhere else, not every time. So in those cases, I need some simpler classes, and those have now been provided to us. And the class that are available for us is local date, year, month, day, year, and there are a lot of classes which have been provided to us. We'll start exploring those classes. One of the most widely used class nowadays is a local date. Now, even before I touch upon this local date, let's talk about the date class. Date class was the most widely used because date is something that we come across every day. That means every transaction that we talk about will always be associated with some kind of date. So date is something that we just cannot overlook. Date is something which is all pervasive everywhere. Every application will always have it. Every transaction there will be a date when the transaction started and so on. Date is very critical. But when we construct object of type date, it has so much of information other than the date. It has time, milliseconds, minute. It actually is the machine time. It's one long value which is from the epoch 1st January 1970 से लेके अब तक how many milliseconds have been passed. Now I'm not really interested in all those milliseconds kind of thing. Date is date. That's enough. I'm not really interested in that fractional millisecond time kind of thing. So here, when I talk about ISO calendar, which is a global standard today, if I ask you what's the date today, you may possibly tell me, sir, it's 7th of April 2020. That's as per the ISO calendar. Now, when we talk about this ISO calendar and we would like to have to represent date as per that ISO calendar, local date will come into action, which will only be talking about date. We need not bother about other aspects, the time and the zone, those things nobody is interested in. So suppose I'm asking you what's your date, birth date, or when do you plan to get married, your wedding date kind of thing. Or if you ask me, sir, what was the wedding date and wedding anniversary? So in that case, I am not going to tell you, I got married on so-and-so date at so-and-so time and these many milliseconds. Now that doesn't really make sense. It's weird. If I'm going to talk about my birth date, I should rather talk only about my birth date. I could say it's 1st January 1970, whatever it could be the date. So I am only interested in talking about that particular date aspect, not the entire information that we have been talking about. So the time and other factors, milliseconds, I was born in as per the Indian Standard Time. No, it's only about the date, and local date is human date. Now, if I ask you any date, if I tell you what's the date tomorrow, so you may tell me, say it's 8th of April 2020. So that's just the date part, and that will be addressed to by this class local date. So it will only give you the date part, nothing more than that. And by default, the format will be YYMMDD, 4-digit 2020, MM 2 digits 0405 kind of NDD 2 digit. Here, even if it's 1 digit, like month is 4, it is this way 04, and then DD that will come in your day, whatever the day is. And without time. Most important thing is without time. So likewise, we also have a class called as local time. But let me first give an example of this local date and then come to this class called as local time. Let's take up local date first. Let's take up local date. Okay. So let's continue with this local time. We talked about local date. Now we also have a class called as local time. Now if I ask you what's the time now, I will tell you, sir, it's 7th of this thing. Now you're not interested when I'm asking you what's the time now. So in that case, we are not really interested in knowing what's the date today. If I ask you what's the time, you have to tell me it's 6 hours, 30 minutes, whatever it is. So it's only the time that we are interested in. We are not really interested in knowing the date part of that information. We did not really want it. So local time, another class. So this local time is without time zone, is for the ISO calendar again, and it will tell you it's 10 hours, 15 minutes, 30 seconds. That's good enough for us. Okay, and it's immutable. That means once you instantiate that object, you cannot change. But we can construct as many times you want to construct an object. You can actually construct those objects. Time is represented in nanosecond precision. That's okay with us. But it has only one component, that is time. There is no date part which is associated. The earlier classes that we have been using in Java, I remember date and calendar. It had all that unnecessary information which was there, daylight time saving and other things. So we are not really interested in all that information. So whatever information, when I say date, if I'm interested only in the date part, if I ask you what's your birth date, I just need the date, local date class. If I say what's the time now, what time your college starts, so I'm office starts, I'm only interested in the time part. I'm not really interested in the date part. So we have this class called as LocalDate to address to this particular issue. We also have a class called as LocalDate time. Sometimes we are interested in date and time. I am supposed to join the office or report to the office on particular day for my interview. In that case, it will be like date and time both. So somebody will tell me you are supposed to report to that office at so and so day at so and so time. So I need to have local date time. But when I'm saying local date time, again, I'm not really interested in having information about the zone as per Indian Standard Time or something like that. If somebody tells you you have to come down for, you have your Viva on 5th of 30th of April 2030 at 11 a.m. Is it somebody's going to tell you at 11 a.m. as per Indian Standard Time? Nobody is going to do that. It's by default the local time zone. So I really am not interested in that additional information. Or somebody's going to tell you whether we have daylight time saving or not. So those unnecessary information is not something that we like to have. So first class that we saw was local date. Second class that we saw was local time. And now the third one that I'm introducing you to is local date time, wherein we have both the components, date and time. Both the components are there, year, month, day, hour, minute, second. That's how it will go ahead storing. So it will give you a lot of information, which week of the year it is, which day of the year it is, and times will also be represented to a quite precision. We have something called as temporal adjuster classes as well. Now this is something which is very, very powerful. Let me check whether NetBeans has started. If it has started, yeah, it has started. So what I'll do is I'll first go to the demonstration and then I'll go ahead with this temporal adjuster. Okay, temporal adjuster. Things to be discussed. So let's first have a look at date and time, and then we'll go ahead with temporal adjuster. Here we go. It's one of the biggest example. Only one example today we are going to discuss, and only 466 lines, not even 500 lines. Okay, let's start. Then so many different classes I'm going to introduce you to. Look at the number of classes that are there now. These are different classes, and you'll enjoy you accessing those classes. So let's take first example of local date. Let's take for example of local date. Here we go. Local date. Now, in this local date, I want to instantiate a date. Remember, date class constructor which takes in day, month, year has been deprecated. So if I want today's date, I cannot even say today's or yesterday's date or some date. I cannot even say date class in which I pass year, month, day. That function has been deprecated. Now, instead we can say local date of. This of method obtains local date from year, month, and day. So I can say year, it's 2015, month is July, and 13. So 2015, July to 13th of 2015, of method. Now this of method we'll find in all these classes, you'll find method of that will be used to instantiate object. It will return you an object of that type. So local date I have taken. Where is this local date coming from? Let's have a look at it. Local date, where is it coming from? What happened to Java doc? Anyway, this local date is coming from package called as java.time. So all these classes, except for the older generation classes, are all coming from this java.time. So that's the number of classes that we plan to discuss today. So quite a lot of classes we are going to have introduced into, and they're all simple, very, very simplified mechanism to represent dates and store dates into databases and access. So this is one of the best things that happened in Java IC 8, and you're lucky I'm discussing it for the first time for your batch. Here I go. Local date D1 is equal to local date of, I'm saying 2015, month of July 13. Month is a predefined class which is available, that means. Okay, so you can represent month in the words, whatever, 12 months of the year you can display. And right now I have said month as July. Okay, and they're all predefined constant. And local date, again, same class, ISO 8609 calendar system, which represent year in year, month, and day kind of representation format which is available. So I construct a local date object. Let's debug this code from here. Step by step, we'll go ahead. Let's debug this code from here. We are going to construct an object, and then we'll work with various methods that this class. I've handpicked some very important methods that will be handy for us, and that will give you understanding as to use cases. You will understand where you can use this particular class. So we have constructed a local date class object, and I print that local date class object. Now, when I print that local date class object, it has printed that object saying 2015, 7, 13. That's a predefined format, and there is a date time formatter class. Remember, we have been talking about formatting, but there is a special date time formatting class which has been introduced for this local date time. We plan to take up that as well in case if you finish with this. So I have printed this day. So by the default format, year, month, and day has been printed. July, that's 7th month, and 13th, that has been printed. So that's how simple it was. Local date of, and you specify your date, and you get that date class object that has been created, local date class object that has been created. Or you're reading from the keyboard, and user has punched in that data. Anything that comes from a file or you punch it from the keyboard will come in form of a string. So we have a string that is representing some date. So I can parse it. We have been using this parse with every other class. So I say local date.parse. I say 2019-10-05, October 5th, 2019. But that's a string, and I want to convert this string to local date. So just local date.parse. Off was a static method. This is also a static method. Note, we have not yet constructed object. These all methods are constructing object and supply. They are all like factory. I'm constructing object with the specified date. I'm constructing object with a specified string. The only thing is, this is the pattern by default. You have to just make sure your string pattern matches. So if I give the date in the correct pattern, so you will construct a date, and look, that object has now been created. So that's a date time object which has now been created. So D1 is an object. So look at that. It's no longer a string. It's an object which will have that additional information as well, some additional information as well. Year, month, day, that has been stored. Local date object has now been created. But I want to know current system time. If you look at my system time, system date, it says it's 7th of April, and this is the time, 7th of April 2020. And I want to know that, I can just say localdate.now. Now will actually return you today's date. Okay, so let me just break this particular statement into two halves, so that we'll also explore this function called as now. So for some reason, I wanted to construct today's date. So we saw two methods. One method that we saw was off, other method we saw was parse, and the next one that we could have actually used, suppose if I say today, now. Now if I say today, now, and I print today's date, if I print today's date, that's okay. So I could just say system.out, I could say out, and I could just say today, and if I say today, here we go. So we have printed this today. So while I'm printing this today, let's see what is going to get printed. So let's start debugging from here. So now it's going to take the system time, system date, whatever your system date may be, and our system clock, whatever it may give. So I'm going to say now we'll give you today's date, and we print today's date. Let's see what has it printed. Have we got the today's date? 2024, that is April, and 7th. So 7th of April 2040 is what we have got. We have not yet formatted the date, and I want to know what's the date tomorrow. So +1. I can say +1 and plus any value. So whatever number of days you add, it will correctly add that date, and it will tell you what the date is after that. So now right now I say +1, and I say tomorrow. So look at that. Tomorrow is 8. I could have added some large number of days. It's not like I cannot go beyond 30. Let's do that. If I ensure this, I say add 30 days, or say add 35 days. Let's see what happens if I say plus 35 days. And in this month, we did not have 35 days, or rather in any month, we don't have 35 days. And I'm trying to add 35. Let's see what happens if I add more than 30 days, more than the number of days which are available. I say plus 35, it has added, and watch it. Your today's date was month of April tha. Now it is month of May, and 12th of month of May. That means it has added 30 days. So if somebody is going to tell me, say, you are a manufacturer, or you are writing an application for a company which is supposed to raise or ask for the bill, the other party is going to pay you the bill after 45 days. So you need to know the date after 45 days, which is the date when I'm going to remind that particular party to make the payment. It would be otherwise very difficult for us to handle that particular thing by using our regular date and calendar class. Here, whatever was today you ship the consignment, and after 45 days you are supposed to receive the payment, plus 35 or 45, you will get the date when you are expected to receive that particular thing. No calculation to be done. Plus, like we have plus, we also have minus. Say, here I say, so this was, I added 35. Okay, but then it could have been 1. That would have been more appropriate if I want to have tomorrow's date and so on. But it's not like only plus, we also have something called as minus. If I can add, if I say, array, 7 days back, you had raised a query. So what was the date 7 days back? I would like to know. So in that case, here I go, 1 month back if it is. So I get local date.now, I get today's date and time, minus, I say 1. Now comes another class called as chrono units. Now chrono units is a standard date period units. Now what are the periods in a date? In date you have month, year, day, whatever it may be the case. So you can increase or decrease in plus also, and in minus also. You can say I'm saying 1, but what 1? Here when I said plus days, I'm only talking about days. I'm not talking about months. So as many number of days I had, we added 35, and so we went to the next month. But then I was only talking about days. Here I have an opportunity to say, I'm saying 1 month, 1 day, 1 year. I would like to add anything that I'd like to add. So here is the value, and here that value represents which period of the day, of the date. I'm saying month period, month part of that particular date. So this chrono unit, very, very interesting class that gives you standard set of date periods, date period units, month, day, year, what you would like to have. Let's explore and see what all other things are available. Chrono units dot, we have days, decade, era, forever, half day, and lot of interesting, even half day, and weeks as well. So there are so many kind of predefined constants which are available. I have currently taken the simplest one, that is month. So today is 7th of April, and now I say minus 1 month. So what was the date exactly 1 month back? you don't have to bother about 31, 29, 30, 30 days. It will do all those calculations correctly. So previous month, same date. What was the date? Previous month, same date. It was 3rd of March, 3rd of March kind of thing. So it has correctly gone back, 3rd of March. Now I say आज का date local date dot now plus day. Oh sorry, this we have already seen. Here I go. I say local date dot now. I say day of the week. Now today it is day of the week. So there are two ways. It's the 7th day of the week or it's Tuesday. Let's see what does it get, day of the week gives you. So when I use this method day of the week, it's going to return as an object of type day of the week. Note there is a class called as day of the week, java.time.day of the week. Okay, so it is a enum representing 7 days of the week. So if it, then again you may ask me, sir, last time when we looked at the date time formatting, sometimes we had 8 days and 13 months. Hindu calendar had 13 months. Some calendars had a number of days in a week as 8. True, local date is as per ISO 8166, the standard class, and the regular English calendar that we follow. And there are 7 days. So you don't have to bother much about it. So here I say day of the week and I print today. Let's see what we got. So we got Tuesday, 7 days of week, Monday से लेके Sunday तक. So we got it today, day today. So week of day of the week is a class that we have taken up now. Day of the week is a class that we have taken. That also comes from the same package, java.time.day of the week. And then I printed the today, day today. So day today is Tuesday. It has got printed. So I say get day of the month. I get the integer value. Not in, every time I'm interested in integer, I would also like to have a textual represent of the date, month. That's also possible. But this local date dot now gave us today's date dot, and we already have today namka variable we already had created. We could have used the same variable. Where is that today that we had created? We had created that variable today somewhere back. So we could have used that variable today as well here. So there was no need for me to always say local date dot now, local date dot now. That no need. So I could have just said today. Anyway, but here I'm saying day of the month. So the day of the month, it will give you the number. So this is the 7th day of the month. This is the 7th day of the month is what we have got. So day of the month. Here it gave you an integer. Day of the month return type dekho. Here it goes. Its return type is integer. Day of the month return type is integer. Watch it. Whereas when I say get day of the week, return type dekho. Days of the week is the return type that we have. Days of the week. So days of the week is again a package. It implements temporal accessor. I'll show you what the temporal is. Again, it is only available since Java IC 8. Immutable. Another very important thing that I forgot. All these classes that we have now are immutable. Now the best thing about immutability is then if I'm doing some kind of functional programming, whenever I pass this, there is no way you can change it. And that's a prerequisite for writing functional programming in Java or in any other language. Immutability is a key feature. And all these objects are immutable. I can immutable means you cannot actually change. Now you can operate and get a new date. That's okay. Now I say local date dot now. So I'm going to get today's date. I'm going to check is it a leap year. So all these kind of functions are aware. Is it a leap year? It says true. It's a leap year. I was also not aware, but that's a leap year that is there. So we have now just checked local date dot now, and I'm checking it's a leap year. So we have got it. It's a leap year. Now there are two friends, and I want to like you to know who is elder and who is younger. So I want to compare the dates. So if I want to compare the date, who comes before and whose date's age comes later. So I say I have one date. I say local date dot parse. That's parsing a string that represents a date. I say it's June 12, 2016. That's one date. I'm saying dot is before local date dot parse. I have passed some other date. So I'm saying is 12th of June before 11th of June. Is that the case? That's false. So this method called as is before returns as Boolean value either true or false. Let's take an example. Let's see what it does it really give us. So I'm saying is this date before this date? It says false. But then is it after that? There's another method is before and is after. So I take another date 2019 5th of means 12th of May, and then I have 11th of May. So I'm checking is 12th of May after 11th of May. That's true. So in that case, is after method is being called. Here we called method is before. Now we are looking at method called as is after. Now when we print, it says true. So we have two very interesting methods, is before and is after. Here I go. So I say local date dot parse, and the date I have given is 5th of 10th of May 2019, and I say at start of the day. Now every day will have a boundary. Every time in a day also has a boundary. Your clock starts at 000000 and ends at 23 hours 59 minutes and 59 seconds kind of thing. So there is always a boundary for day and month. So we would like to know the start day at the start of the day. So every range has a boundary. The date starts at some time and ends at some time. So dates will also have a boundary. So I give this particular date and I would like to know the boundary. So this at start of the day, let's look at the return type. Return type is not date because we are talking about the boundary. It returns local date and time class. We are yet to discuss this local date and time class, but I told you we had local date, we had local time, we had local date and time. So it's going to return as local date and time. That will also have time component inside it. And when I print this beginning of the day, it says beginning of the date was 10th of May 2019 000, and that's very true. 000, that was the beginning of the day. So here we have a local date class wherein we have found what's the start of the day. Now again, I told you about temporal adjuster. So let's discuss this temporal adjuster before I go ahead, and then we come back to the methods that they actually provide. But anyway, here there is only one example. I'll take this example and then I'll go to temporal adjuster. So I say local date dot now, that gives me only the today's date. So I have got today's date, and I'm saying with method, with. Okay, so with temporal adjuster dot first day of the month. So I want to have the local date, but I would like to have the first day of this particular month. Likewise, there are several methods. Last day se leke everything is there. So I'm saying आज का जो date है, I got local date dot now give me today's date, and I'm saying with I would like to adjust this date, and I'm gonna pass a temporal object. You may say temporal object कहाँ है? अरे temporal adjuster dot first day of the month will give me temporal object. So that object I'm going to pass, and using this particular object, it will construct a new date and supply it to me. So when I give this call and look at this first day of this month, so it was first. Likewise, I could try to get the last day of the month as well. We could do that operation as well. So we have this particular class called as temporal adjuster. So temporal adjuster dot. Okay. So we have first, last. Likewise, we have also have last day of the month and so on. Let's use that last day of the month as well and see. So here we have first day of the month, and I want to know because this some months may have 31 days, some may have 28 days, kind of thing. So I just have to say last day of the month. So I'm going to say last day of the month, and here instead of first day, I'm again going to say only last day of the month. Very powerful features which are available. So you don't have to write any logic henceforth when you have to handle dates in Java. All your possible requirements that you may ever have actually been addressed to. You may ever have, I'm saying, and I'm not exaggerating. Actually, whatever you may think about, almost all implementations are available. I'm going to come to very interesting things as I go ahead, and you will also fall in love with this particular set of classes. You'll forget about date and you'll forget about calendar. Look, let's run this particular code, and let's go to the last part of our discussion. So I wanted to know the last day of this particular month. So let's check what's the last day of this month. Last day of month is 30. There are only 30 days in this particular month and so on. So that's how we have seen this class called as local date.